Welcome to Games from Folktales, a podcast that mixes historical research and tabletop role-playing settings. I'm your host, Timothy Ferguson. This week, a little sliver of Venice. This is from my recording of the biography of the Dogeresses of Venice for LibriVox. It's the story of the daughter of a doge who was married into a rival family. Then, when the rival family rebelled anyway, she and all of her children and anyone who was married to the rebels was banished. She made her way back to Venice and was punished terribly for it. And I think she may be my ambassador for hell to the Serenissima that we're developing. I kept developing Port Factotums as the chief devil for Venice, and somehow they kept turning up a little bit like the ambassador in Fallen London, if anyone else plays that game. A little too suave, a little too demonic. So instead, I'm going to have a deeply wronged woman for whom an infernal pact was an escape. My working name for her is the Confined Canoness, and like the other members of her order, she will be double-veiled, except one of her veils, the inner one, will be red. Over to a younger version of me. Although Doge Soranzo's public life was so successful and so popular, in private his heart and that of the Dogeressa were broken by anxiety and sorrow. Thus evenly are mundane affairs balanced. The story of Donna Soranzo, their dearly loved daughter, is as sad can be. Married to Niccolo, eldest son of Marco Quirino, the leader of the Querini-Tiepolo conspiracy, he was exiled with his wife the very day his father's head fell to the executioner's axe. They made their home at Zara, but Messer Niccolo survived his expatriation but 4 years, when he, too, fell, stabbed by an unknown hand. The widowed Madonna sought to return to Venice and return to her father's home, but her appeals were all in vain. Doge Soranzo, like another Brutus, treated his daughter's pleas with quite uncalled-for severity. At last she determined to throw herself upon the mercy of the Council of 40, and making her way hopefully, she presented herself dutifully to her father and mother. That was a mournful homecoming, and mother and daughter, clasped in each other's arms, resisted the austere ruling of the Doge, who had informed the council of his daughter's return. In spite of all good Dogeressa Francesina could say or do, her unhappy child was torn from her embrace and condemned to perpetual exclusion in the convent of Santa Maria della Vergine. Gentlewomen of Madonna Soranzo Quirini's position were styled canonesses, and each had her own little casa and a domestic servant who was allowed to go out washing, and was permitted to make purchases for her mistress, and even to convey messages to her friends. The poor ladies were not suffered even to visit each other, and they could only take exercise in the convent garden at rare and stated intervals. Every year the Doge paid a ceremonial visit to the convent, where he was received with great honour by the abbess and the superior canonesses, who were all arranged in magnificent white silk brocade robes, and each wore 2 veils, one black and one white, signifying that though they were in the world, they were not of it. The abbess handed the Doge a bouquet of sweet flowers in a golden jewelled holder, and he bestowed in return caskets of sweetmeats upon the devout recluses. Never once did father and daughter meet. She yearned to embrace him and her mother, but he never even made inquiries about her. She was dead to the world, to the family, and to him, a Spartan father's discipline. Letters and messages were all in vain. Unhappy Madonna Soranzo's only consolation was the companionship of another Quirino widow, Andriola, who remained a very short time in the convent, for a suitor appeared in the person of Angelo Bembo, and he was permitted to remove his inamorata to the convent of Santa Maria di Valverde upon the island of Mazorbo, where they were married. Alas, poor Madonna Soranzo had no such fortune, but she pined and pined in her solitude, and after 25 years of suffering, she laid her down and died, 20 years after the death of her stern father. Certainly an edict passed in 1313 sentenced the wives of rebels and outlaws with their children to perpetual exile, and they were warned that unsanctioned return to Venice would be visited with perpetual confinement. Undoubtedly this proved the rule. As sententious writers have noted, the sternness of justice is superior to the tenderness of affection. Your saga, of course, may vary.